Hey, it's Tom from LP Times. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to be able to speak with more confidence. Confidence, something a lot of people say that they want more of. And sometimes, especially when they're speaking in front of real human beings, live people in an audience or in one-on-one situations, can become an issue. Some people get a little caught up. So what I want to give you is 3 practical things that you can do today to speak with more confidence, to be comfortable when you're in a room, whether there's many people or if you're speaking in a small group context where there's just 2 or 3 people. And you want to be able to do it where it feels natural and you actually enjoy speaking. Tip number 1 is be present. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people, when they have issues with confidence, especially when it comes to public speaking, what they're typically doing, if you look at it from an NLP process point of view, is that they're inside in their head and they're imagining that the people that they're communicating with are thinking bad things about them, or they are imagining that they're messing up, or perhaps that they think that they're twisting their words, they're unable to communicate. There are a lot of different variations in terms of the content, what people do, but typically it falls around a couple of categories. One is the person is thinking, oh, I'm nervous, it's all going to go wrong. So they're creating an imagined future in their head, and it's one where things are going very bad for them. Perhaps people don't think they're, good or whatever. They also oftentimes have a strong internal voice that's critical. It's highly self-critical, like, oh my God, you're tripping over your words, you sound so stupid, YouTube people are going to flame you, any of this kind of stuff. And of course, if I was inside of my head, and right now I was imagining that you at home are here judging me, and you're thinking, who is this fool with this Irish accent, and what's that silly jumper he's wearing, and he's communicating with me, why would I ever be interested in, listening to this fella, etc. Then I'm going to go, I don't know, I'm going to be stuttering. I'm not going to be confident. I'm not going to be clear. I'm not going to be on point. So if you want to begin to tackle and have more confidence when you speak, is simply be present. Get out of your head and return to your senses. So that means being present to what's actually occurring in the room. For example, if you're communicating with several different people, that you make eye contact and you connect with each and every one of them like they're a friend, like somebody you want to spend time with. And also it helps to hold the thought that what you've got to say is important, it's relevant. And as long as you're thinking about your listener and what might be useful to them, it will be. So becoming present, paying attention to what's actually arising and catching that monkey mind, or what we at LP Times refer to as the robot in action, which is the natural process that occurs sometimes, and that's habituated, when you're in a group environment. Rather than being present to what's going on, you start thinking, oh my God, they're not liking me. You have a negative incantation. You start imagining it all go wrong. And if you really want to give yourself a hand of messing up, so to speak, do all of that several times before you get to speak in front of your group or in front of a small number of people. Because if you do all that, it's going to get you the opposite outcome. It's totally natural that you would then be nervous, stuttering, afraid of what people are judging or what they're saying. Okay, so tip 1, practice becoming more present. Simply just noticing. Take a breath. Pay attention to your surroundings. Connect with individual people. Be interested and engaged in what's arising in the room or with the people around you. Use that as your basis for evaluating and judging what you should be saying and how you're being received. Not treating what's in your head as some awful reality that only exists in here in your head, but is not occurring out here in the actual world. Do that, you're going to find that you're going to start speaking more confident, because you're going to find that you relax, that you can be more natural, that you can connect with people. And we're going to go now with the second tip that will really help you develop this ability to be able to speak confidently with others. And that is, know your function. I've talked about this as the one question that if you ask yourself, if you want to become a better public speaker, public communicator, makes a huge difference. It's something that my friend and colleague, Master Trainer Michael Breen, highlighted to the people that he's worked and trained with, and that is, what is your function? Before you communicate, especially if you're in a context where you're being asked to speak to a group, or that you're in a business presentation, or it's a team meeting and you're getting up and you're saying a few words, or it's at a party, it might be a speech after dinner, whatever, in that context, be aware first of what is your function. What are you there to do? If it's, a celebration, you might be saying a few words about somebody who's leaving their job and going somewhere else. So you want to connect with your audience and decide, depending on the personality of the person you're working with, what elements you want to highlight that are going to be engaging and interesting. If it is a situation where it's in a presentation with a group of managers, again, by being clear about what your function is, it may be to share key bits of information. It may be in a business context, if it's a consultancy type situation, that you're there to emphasize the urgency about why this problem needs to be solved. And so when you're aware of what your function is and what you're there for, it makes everything else so much easier, because you're using that as your anchor point. Yeah, that's going to guide you to making sure that you can be on topic, be on point, and communicate clearly and confidently. Tip number 3, use a framework. If you haven't prepared yourself to know how to be able to communicate well, if you haven't trained the skill in and it is a skill, then my big suggestion here is that use a crutch, if you will, a tool, a heuristic. And a great one is the 3 Ps, which stand for purpose, process, payoff. So you can literally talk about anything in these 3 categories. You can talk about the purpose. What is the purpose of said thing? So let's just say the purpose right now, I'm recording here, I've got some lights in front of me and I want to tell you about these lights. Well, the purpose of the light, in this case, is to make sure that I'm sufficiently illuminated so that the camera sensor can pick things up. That's one description of purpose. We could also say the purpose of the lights is to make sure that you, the viewer, can clearly see the detail of me, and that you can enjoy the video without even needing to be aware of the lights, because the lighting was so good you got absorbed. Okay, so pay attention to what's the purpose. Any situation, anything you're talking about, there will be a purpose. And by asking yourself, what is the purpose of X, you can then begin to communicate that. So process is the second P, and that is, what is the process, the activity that said thing does in order to achieve its outcome. So we could say in this case about lights, that the process of at least turning the light on might be plugging it in first, making sure that the lighting element is in the light, and then flicking the switch on the light and making sure that the light illuminates and comes on. That's the process, so to speak, of how to turn on a light. Everything has a process to it. So by targeting and identifying what exactly the process is, it allows you to be able to communicate. It can be a process description that takes 3 seconds, 30 seconds, or even 3 hours, depending on exactly what your outcome is. The final P in the 3 Ps is payoff. So what's the payoff you get? We've talked about what the purpose is, we've talked about the process, so what's the payoff? In this case, the payoff is, I've got good, well-lit video. In your context, it may be that the payoff, let's just say that you learn to swim. Okay, if we take this as an example, so I'm going to riff here about swimming. So what's the purpose? The purpose of swimming may be, and that depends on context, it could be a relaxing activity. It could be you're learning swimming because you're going into an athletic event and it's got a water component and you've got to be able to swim from A to B in order to complete. The purpose may be, again, that you're learning swimming so that if you get thrown out of a boat or some fun happens, you're going rafting one time and suddenly the boat flips over, that you are confident that you can swim in the water and get yourself to safety. Okay? The process of learning to swim or swimming, well, that's a whole different thing. So the process in this case, if I want to talk about it, would be, if you want to learn to swim, get down the pool. I'm going to go through some of the basics. One of the first things you want to do when you're learning to swim is pay attention to streamlining. Because when you are in the water and when you're swimming, most people try and pull their way through the water. And the problem with that is either they're pulling really hard or kicking, and if they're not that experienced a swimmer, they're probably gasping for water, is that completely affects their balance and buoyancy. But when you streamline and when you go through the water and you rotate from side to side and you extend your body from tip to toe, that has a huge impact in your ability to be able to glide along the water. So now, when you are swimming and you're pulling, you're literally getting the maximum force that's possible from each stroke as you're gliding through the water. Now, I could go into more detail on the process of learning how to swim and the mechanics of that, but you get the idea. And then the final one is payoff. Well, in this case, it's that you can confidently swim from A to B, or that you feel that water is now something that you love to do. Good example of that is Tim Ferriss. Tim's talked about previously about one of the areas that was his weakness was actually swimming. He was something nervous about, that he wasn't very good at, and then he learned about or found out about something called total immersion swimming, which is a great approach to learning how to swim. And he went through the training process and learned simply how to change his form and technique. And then a few months later, or a few weeks, however long it took, I believe actually for Tim's case, he even highlighted he managed to get this all on the weekend. He got a breakthrough in his swimming technique. Why? Because the process was outstanding and he followed the instruction well. And as a consequence, he then was now in a situation where he's actually comfortable swimming, and he swam, I believe it was a 1 kilometer swim that he put a bet down with his friend. So by learning first, when you want to speak more confidently, to be present, by paying attention to the room, the people that you're with, by focusing on what's your function, what do you dare to do, and being absolutely clear. You use that as your anchor, about what you're there to do. Are you there to change people's states, to share information, to change a certain behavior, whatever it is, but being clear about what your function is and why you've been invited or you're speaking. And then the third thing is working to a simple heuristic. 3 Ps, there are many others, beginning, middle, and end, you name it, but all you want to do is make sure that you are clear about each of these parts. Begin to implement them as a skill. Take each chunk that I've talked about and begin to go, okay, how can I be more present? How's my body? Can I relax? Am I performing in the way that I want in terms of communicating? Are you sharing? And then looking at, am I clear about my function? Do I know where I'm going? Because if you don't, of course, you can go all over the place, but also you're probably not going to be speaking authoritatively and confidently, which is often how people judge you when they're thinking if a communicator speaks confidently. And third is that if you don't know the material inside out, then use a heuristic. Decide how you're going to organize and chunk the information so that when you share it, that you're able to engage your listener and create value. So there you have the process. Go ahead, implement them. Try them out, see how you get on. Leave your comment below if you've got a tip, technique, something you've done that really helps you improve your ability to be able to speak confidently. I'd love to hear it. And go ahead, hit the like button below on this video and make sure to subscribe. And you can find more videos, more resources at www.nlptimes.com.